Imagine this. What if one fallen angel actually came back, not fought his way back, not escaped, not forgiven publicly before all heaven, but returned quietly? And what if when he came back, he carried something with him, a secret, not a weapon, not an army, not rebellion, a truth so dangerous? Heaven itself did not speak of it, because when we think of fallen angels, we imagine one ending. They fall, judgment comes, the gates close, story over. But ancient traditions surrounding the Watchers tell a stranger story. A story of angels who crossed a line, who abandoned heaven, who changed humanity forever. And among those names buried in old texts, one appears and disappears almost like a whisper. Namtal, not the most famous, not the strongest. Yet his story leaves behind one terrifying question. What if someone who has seen both heaven and rebellion understands something neither side once revealed? And if one fallen being ever stood before God again, what would he say? What would he ask? And would heaven still feel like home? Before there was exile, before forbidden knowledge, before giants and judgment, there was order. Ancient traditions describe heaven not as endless clouds and silence, but as structure, movement, purpose, ranks, voices, every being carrying out its place. Nothing wasted, nothing hidden, nothing divided. And somewhere among those countless servants was Namtal. His name is mysterious. In traditions that mention him, he is associated with teaching forbidden knowledge to humanity. Not war, not conquest, teaching. And maybe that sounds harmless at first, until you understand the pattern that appears again and again in these ancient stories. The danger was never knowledge itself. The danger was knowledge given without wisdom, power without maturity, truth placed into hands not ready to carry it. Ancient stories describe certain watchers descending to earth. Some taught weapons, others astrology, others enchantments, others hidden arts. Namtal became associated with teaching humanity things they were never meant to hold yet. And that raises a disturbing question. Why? Did he hate humanity? Or did he love them too much? Imagine being an immortal being, watching humans struggle, watching sickness, fear, death, watching people stumble in darkness, and knowing things that could help. Would you stay silent, or would you intervene? That's where these stories become uncomfortable, because rebellion rarely begins with someone saying, "I want evil." Sometimes it begins with, "I think I know better." And that thought, that tiny shift, has changed history more than open hatred ever did. Maybe Namtal didn't descend believing he was becoming fallen. Maybe he believed he was becoming necessary. Maybe he thought, they need us. Maybe he looked at heaven's silence and interpreted it as indifference. Maybe he convinced himself, if God won't act, I will. And suddenly, the line between compassion and pride disappeared. That's the terrifying thing about these stories. The Watchers didn't begin as monsters. They began as beings who stopped trusting heaven's timing. And once that line was crossed, everything changed. Knowledge spread. Boundaries collapsed. Humanity gained things it couldn't control. And according to ancient tradition, judgment followed. The Watchers became symbols of irreversible consequences. Names remembered not for glory, but warning. Most disappear into darkness. Most never return. But Namtal's story doesn't end there, because something happened after the fall, something no one expected, something that should have been impossible. Ancient whispers suggest. One day, Namtal looked upward again, not with defiance, but with regret. And that's where the real mystery begins. Because what happens when someone who walked away wants to come back? Ancient traditions don't give us a detailed biography of Namtal after the descent. And maybe that silence says more than details ever could. Because imagine this. You leave heaven believing you're bringing something good. You give humanity knowledge. You think you're helping. You think you see what heaven does not. Then years pass, generations pass, and you begin watching what people do with the gift. Not wisdom, not healing, not peace, control, violence, fear, power. The same knowledge that looked beautiful in your hands looks different in human hands. And suddenly, you realize something unbearable. You didn't save them. You accelerated something. And now every consequence carries your fingerprints. Can you imagine that moment? Can you imagine seeing suffering and wondering, did I help create this? Because guilt is strange. At first it whispers, then it follows. Then one day, it becomes impossible to ignore. And maybe that's where Namtile changed. Not because punishment forced him, but because for the first time, he understood. Ancient spiritual stories often suggest something people miss. Judgment doesn't always begin with being cast out. Sometimes judgment begins when your eyes finally open. And according to the way this mystery has been told, Namtile began looking upward again, not as an angel, not as a rebel, just as someone who remembered. He remembered light, purpose, the feeling of standing where nothing needed to be hidden. And now, everything felt heavy, so he did something no fallen being was expected to do. He turned around. Now stop there for a second, because that sounds simple. But if you've ever made a terrible decision, you know returning is harder than leaving. Leaving feels powerful, returning feels vulnerable, because returning means admitting, I was wrong. Returning means facing the possibility that nobody wants you anymore. Returning means walking toward judgment. An ancient imagination asks the impossible question, what does it look like for a fallen angel to approach heaven? No armies, no speeches, no demands. Just one figure moving upward, past the places he once knew, past the order he abandoned, past memories that now hurt, and maybe every step felt impossible. Maybe every memory became evidence against him. Maybe he expected the gates to stay closed. Maybe he expected silence. Maybe he expected Michael. Maybe he expected fire. Instead, according to the mystery, something stranger happened. He wasn't destroyed. He wasn't welcomed either. He was stopped. And a voice asked a question, not, why did you fall? Not, why should we trust you? But why did you come back? Think about that. Not what he had done, but what he wanted. Because heaven already knew his history. The real question was, what changed? And that's when Namtile revealed something nobody expected. He said, the knowledge he gave humanity was not the real danger. There was something else, something he learned after the fall, something hidden inside rebellion itself, a secret, deadly enough that he returned carrying it. And suddenly, the atmosphere changed, because this wasn't confession anymore. This was warning. What could possibly frighten heaven, coming from someone already lost? This is where the story changes, because up until now, this sounds like a familiar fall and return story. An angel descends, things go wrong, regret follows. But according to the mystery surrounding Namtile, that wasn't why he came back. He didn't come to ask for his place. He didn't come to defend himself. He came because he had discovered something. And whatever it was, it terrified him enough to return to the place he once abandoned. Picture the moment, the gates, the silence, the hosts of heaven watching, not with celebration, not with anger, waiting, and Namtile speaks. Not proudly, not dramatically, but like someone carrying something too heavy to keep. And he says, I thought rebellion was freedom. That line alone changes everything. Because in stories about fallen beings, rebellion always looks powerful, independent, fearless, untouchable. But Namtile says, that isn't what he found. He says rebellion hides something, something nobody notices at first, because rebellion promises you control, but eventually demands your identity. At first, you choose it. Then one day you realize it has started choosing for you. Think about the pattern. You step outside order to gain freedom, but eventually, your entire existence becomes reacting to what you left. You become defined by resistance, by proving yourself, by justifying yourself, by refusing to admit regret. And suddenly, you're no longer free. You're trapped, not by heaven, by yourself. Ancient storytelling often circles this terrifying idea. The deepest punishment is not always being locked out. Sometimes, it's becoming unable to return even when the door exists. And Namtal said something that stunned everyone. According to the legend, he discovered among the fallen something spreading faster than hatred. Not fire, not war, not violence. A belief, a deadly belief. The belief that once you cross the line, you can never change. Think about that. Not chains, not judgment, hopelessness. That was the secret. That was the poison. Not that they fell, but that they began believing they were only their fall. And once that idea takes hold, everything changes. Because why seek truth if you're already lost? Why seek God if return is impossible? Why become different if failure becomes identity? Namtal supposedly saw it spreading among the fallen, this endless cycle of pride covering regret. Not because they didn't want heaven, but because they couldn't imagine being wanted. And that realization broke him, because suddenly he understood. His greatest mistake wasn't descending. His greatest mistake was deciding heaven's answer before asking the question. And that's why he returned. Not to demand, not to negotiate, but to say, do not let them believe this. Can you imagine that scene? A fallen being standing at heaven's gates, warning heaven about despair. Not asking, will you take me back? But asking, does anyone still believe return is possible? And according to the mystery, there was no immediate answer, no thunder, no public declaration, just silence. Because some questions are too deep to answer instantly. And Namtal waited, not knowing whether silence meant rejection or something else. Then, something happened, something so unexpected that later storytellers barely describe it, because some moments become impossible to put into words. And this is where the story becomes quiet. Namtal stood there, no defense left, no explanation left. He had already said everything. He had carried his warning. He had confessed what he believed. And now, there was nothing to do except wait. Imagine being in that moment, not knowing if the next thing you hear will be acceptance or the end. Because waiting reveals things success never does. When there's no control left, you finally discover what you truly wanted. Did Namtal want heaven, or did he just want relief from guilt? Did he want restoration, or permission to stop hurting? Questions like that are uncomfortable, because they don't only belong to angels, they belong to people too. And according to the mystery, as Namtal waited, something happened that he never expected. No accusation came, no list of failures, no replay of every wrong decision. Instead, a question, one question, simple, direct, and impossible to hide from. The voice asked, if the gates opened, why would you enter? Think about that. Not, do you deserve it? Not, can you earn it? Not, can you explain yourself? But why do you want to come in? Because there's a difference between wanting safety and wanting home. Ancient spiritual stories often suggest something surprising. Return isn't only about direction, it's about desire. Namtal had spent so long believing the real problem was punishment that he forgot the deeper question. What did he actually love? The knowledge, the independence, the status, or heaven itself? And according to the story, for the first time, he didn't answer immediately, because all his old answers sounded empty. Eventually he said, not as an angel, not as someone wise, just honestly. He said, I wanted to become greater. Then I wanted to become right. Then I wanted to escape what I had done. But now, I only want truth. And then, silence again, long enough to feel unbearable. And this is the part that later storytellers describe differently. Some say the gates opened. Some say they remained closed. Some say Namtal was restored. Others say he was allowed only to stand at the edge of heaven and look in. But the oldest and most haunting version says something else. It says, he was not told yes. He was not told no. He was simply told, stand. And he stood, not condemned, not celebrated, waiting, facing heaven, no longer running, no longer pretending, no longer carrying rebellion like a crown, just standing. And according to the legend, that was the beginning of his return. Not because he earned it, not because he proved himself, but because, for the first time, he stopped deciding heaven's answer before hearing it. And maybe that was the deadly secret all along. Not that heaven refuses return, not that rebellion wins, but that despair convinces people not to ask. That pride convinces people not to turn around. That fear convinces people the story is already finished, even when it isn't. Now remember, this is not a story found in the Bible itself. It belongs to ancient traditions and imaginative retellings around the fallen angels and the Watchers. But maybe the reason stories like this survive is because they ask questions people still wrestle with today. Can someone return after failing? Can identity change? Can regret become something more? And if heaven answered, would we even believe it? If you enjoyed this mystery, subscribe to Bible Mysteries, like the video, and tell me in the comments, do you think a fallen angel should ever be allowed back into heaven? And until the next mystery, keep searching.